Leaves fall from the trees and crunch under your feet. The air is getting colder and crisper. Darkness falls as a ghostly moon rises in the night sky and casts an eerie glow. October 31st is just around the corner. Who or what will you be for Halloween? Many of you will be celebrating Halloween this Saturday, whether it's by taking younger children trick-or-treating, attending college parties, going to haunted houses, or decorating your front porches with jack-o'-lanterns. Like many of you, I have personal experience with Halloween through yearly celebrations since my childhood. Through my research, I've become more knowledgeable on the history of Halloween, and I hope to share that information with all of you today. Halloween is a holiday with a deep and mysterious past that has withstood time and many attempts to eradicate its folklore and traditions, evolving into the multi-million-dollar industry we know today. Today, I will first talk about the pagan origins of Halloween and Christian influence. Secondly, I'll discuss its arrival in the 19th century America and the beginnings of modern-day Halloween. Thirdly, I will briefly present some statistics on modern-day Halloween in America. To begin, Halloween has its origins in the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain, which was later adapted to a Christian holiday around the 5th century AD in an attempt to convert the Celtic people to Christianity. Though we know very little about the early history of Halloween, many historians think that it stems from Samhain, meaning summer's end. It's the Celtic equivalent of New Year's and the harvest festival that marked the death of summer and a day in which spirits from the other world were free to cross into our world at night. In Nicholas Rogers' book Halloween, From Pagan Ritual to Party Night, Samhain was also a period of supernatural intensity when the forces of darkness and decay were said to be abroad, spiking out from the seed, the ancient mounds or barrows from the countryside. To ward off these spirits, the Irish built huge, symbolically regenerative bonfires and invoked the help of the gods through animal and perhaps even human sacrifice. In Halloween in America, contemporary customs and performances, and academic folklorist Jack Santino connects the ancient practice of providing food offerings to these spirits to the earliest forms of trick-or-treating. The folk practice of giving gifts of food and drink to maskers who imitate those spirits. The Catholic Church unsuccessfully tried to replace Samhain with a more Christian holiday on two different occasions. Jack Santino notes that the first recorded attempt was in 601 AD by Pope Gregory I, who instructed his missionaries to Ireland to demonize traditional pagan beliefs and supplant Christian ones in their place through the creation of the Feast of All Saints on November 1st. The Feast of All Saints became known as All Hallows, hallow meaning saint from the Middle English Halloway, which in turn became All Hallows Eve, Hallows Even, and then was finally shortened to Halloween. Despite the demonization of Samhain, many traditions persisted on Hallows Even, including making offerings to wandering spirits. The story of one such wandering spirit is Jack-o'-lantern, a blacksmith who was expelled from hell for tricking the devil and forced to wander the earth, lighting his way with a hollowed-out turnip filled with coals from hell. Behind me you'll see an example of an early jack-o'-lantern next to a modern-day pumpkin jack-o'-lantern. In response to the first failed attempt to diminish pagan practices, Rogers notes the creation of All Souls' Day on November 2nd during the 9th century AD. Following the creation of All Souls' Day came the practice of souling, which he further explains was the practice of going door to door with a lighted turnip to represent souls trapped in purgatory. And they basically asked for food in exchange for prayers for the dead. The next topic I'd like to talk about is how Halloween came to America and how it was transformed from an adolescent-centered day of destruction into the commercialized, family-friendly industry that is now modern-day Halloween. Moving forward to the 19th century America, a great number of Irish facing the potato famine immigrated to America and brought their traditions of Halloween along with them, which later inspired the modern-day tradition of trick-or-treating in the 1950s. Geo Athena Trevarthen, postdoctoral fellow in the Department of Celtic and Scottish Studies at the University of Edinburgh, explains her article explains in her article, The Celtic Origins of Halloween Transcend Fear, that Irish adolescents, usually young boys, were given a free pass to act out elaborate pranks on Halloween, such as disassembling a sleeping farmer's plow and reassembling it, complete with horse, in his sitting room. As time passed and youth grew more rambunctious, both overseas and in America, Halloween became an opportunity for them to play increasingly destructive tricks in their community to the point where intervention was necessary. In his book, Rogers sheds light on the severity of the vandalism facing America at the time by discussing various ways the American government tried to redirect their destructive energies. In the 1950s, President Truman redubbed Halloween Youth Honor Day in an attempt to curb the destruction, in which school children were given pledge cards that granted them access to community-held Halloween parties if they pledged not to destroy property. The National Recreation Association also tried to redirect this anarchic behavior by instating Halloween parties, dances, and costume competitions. The emerging practice of offering candy bribes to delinquent adolescents was ever strengthened as it sought to marginalize adolescent pranking and to diffuse the antagonism inherent in the festive tribute, transforming the exchange into a rite of consumption. Which was a reflection of the consumerism-based society of the 1950s itself. In Lisa Morton's book Trick or Treat, she further builds on the commercialization of Halloween at this time as well. Candy corn originally was manufactured in the 1880s, but made its debut as a favorite mass-produced Halloween candy in the 1920s, marking the beginning of a trend seen today where candy is specifically manufactured individually wrapped in decorative Halloween wrappers. New manufacturing techniques in the 1950s elevated previously homemade costumes to a new level as licensed characters and new flame retardant materials introduced the idea of today's prefabricated costumes. Finally, the last thing I would like to present are some facts regarding modern-day Halloween in America to further support its evolution into a modern-day booming industry. Today's Halloween retains many of the superficial aspects of ancient traditions that have been transformed by the 1950s commercialization craze, promoting the celebration of Halloween to a new level of popularity. The best way to envision the scope from which the Celtic Samhain has grown into modern-day Halloween craze is with some startling statistics that demonstrate just how much money we spend on Halloween. Morton reports a staggering statistic in Trick or Treat. By the late 2000s, Halloween, after lagging behind Valentine's Day and Easter for decades, finally became the top US holiday in terms of chocolate sales, with sales in 2009 reported at 598 million pounds of candy, earning $1.9 billion in sales. She goes on to state by 1999, almost 30% of consumers spent money on Halloween decorations, and in 2001 they spent $1 billion on them. I'd now like to end my speech today by summarizing some of my main points. Today I first discussed the Celtic origins of Halloween and the transformative influence of the early Christian church. Secondly, I talked about Halloween overseas migration and the evolution with the immigration of the Irish to America. Finally, I gave some brief examples to illustrate how Halloween has been transformed from its pagan origins to a booming industry. Though we spend millions of dollars each year on Halloween today, the essence of this holiday is at its core a symbol of transformation, death, light, and dark. And of course, pulling a few harmless pranks on your cranky neighbor. I hope that as you carve your pumpkins, put on your costumes, and pass out your candy to trick-or-treaters, you take a moment to look up at that ghostly moon and think about all the burning bonfires that lit up the night on Samhain thousands of years ago.